I'm Dave Champion. I haven't spoken about the impeachment process for a little while because, well, frankly, Americans don't care. Well, they care passionately, I think, in some cases about the impeachment. What they don't care about is facts and evidence. As I've said from the outset of this whole thing, people who don't like Donald Trump as president of the United States want him impeached and convicted no matter what the evidence says. And people who support Donald Trump want him not impeached, and now that he has been impeached, they want him not convicted in a Senate trial, no matter what the evidence says. For myself and the other, maybe 17 or 18 Americans who actually care about facts, there is a development I think you'll want to know about. John Bolton, the former national security advisor for Donald Trump, has now stated that if subpoenaed by the Senate in the course of the impeachment trial of Donald Trump, he will testify. And frankly, it doesn't matter whether you are pro-Trump or anti-Trump. This is factually and legally a game changer. In order to explain why this is a game changer, I need to give you a little bit of history. Okay, so McConnell and Graham in the Senate, their plan is to allow the prosecutors from the House, what they call the managers, but they're prosecutors, not to call any witnesses during the trial. Now, I will tell you that in the only two other presidential impeachments, the House managers have been able to take testimony from witnesses. I also believe that the Founding Fathers would be appalled at the notion of not being able to call witnesses because they specifically say that any government official who's impeached by the House is to be tried in the Senate. Well, the very definition of a trial in all the history of the United States is that you can enter documents into evidence and you can call witnesses to testify. So what McConnell and Graham are trying to do is, in my opinion, they are trying to undermine the U.S. Constitution. If the Founding Fathers said in the Constitution that the trial is to take place in the Senate, but current Republican leadership is trying to gut the trial of anything that actually historically defines trial, especially in the minds of the founders, that's violating the Constitution. I will also add this. If you are a Trump supporter, you should want witnesses to testify at the trial. Because if you're a Trump supporter, I'm imagining, unless you're just a corrupt motherfucker, I'm imagining that you think Donald Trump didn't do anything wrong, in which case, I don't know why he's maintaining executive privilege against White House staffers. He maintained executive privilege against them testifying in the House, and it appears quietly in the background he's trying to take the same approach with the Senate trial. So here's the deal on executive privilege. Trump could, if innocent, he could waive executive privilege for those White House staff members so they could go testify. And he could define the limits of the executive privilege he's waiving. He doesn't have to waive the executive privilege for all things that were ever discussed between that person and the president. He could say, when it comes to the question of the phone call that I made to Ukraine and what my intentions were, I am hereby releasing you from executive privilege. Go testify. He's not doing that. As an aside, I don't believe if we could resurrect the founders, they would consider executive privilege something that you can invoke in an impeachment trial in the Senate. Why is that? Because the entire purpose of an impeachment trial is to determine if a government official has done dirt. If the government official has done dirt, who are the people who are most likely to know? Yeah, his closest confidants. So to say, well, wait a second, the people who would really have the evidence about that are the closest confidants, but let's make sure that the closest confidants can't be called during an impeachment trial. Makes no sense. I doubt the founders would have structured things that way. So on to Bolton, finally. Okay, so it is generally believed by virtually everybody in the know in D.C. that if there's one human being on the planet who has firsthand knowledge of Donald Trump's intention in that call with the Ukraine, and then the move to stop the aid from being sent to Ukraine, whether Donald Trump was acting somehow legitimately, or whether, as the impeachment asserts, was exercising an abuse of power. He was bribing a foreign power to interfere in a U.S. election. If there's one person who knows what Donald Trump's intentions were at that moment, it is believed that person is Bolton. Thomas Jefferson famously said, "Impeachment is but a scarecrow." And it looks like McConnell and Graham are trying to cement that into a reality, that impeachment doesn't really matter. It doesn't matter what a government official, could be the president, could be any other government official, doesn't matter what they did or didn't do, doesn't matter what the evidence dictates or doesn't. We're simply going to eviscerate the meaningfulness of the impeachment process and the trial in the Senate. That appears to be what McConnell and Graham are. I don't know whether they're setting out to do that, but that's going to be the net result if they refuse to subpoena Bolton. So one of the articles of impeachment put together by the House against Donald Trump is that in that call with the Ukrainian president, he exercised abuse of power. A witness that everyone presumes his testimony will either convict Donald Trump or clear Donald Trump is Bolton. If McConnell and Graham refuse to allow Bolton to be subpoenaed, history will record that Republican leadership of the 2020 Senate whitewashed, completely eviscerated the intention of the Founding Fathers by refusing to take testimony in a trial of the one man who had evidence of guilt or innocence. That will be the legacy of McConnell, Graham, and frankly, I think for many, many decades, the entire Republican Party. I'm not talking about you if you're an individual registered Republican. I'm talking about the power structure of Republicans in D.C. The legacy will be that Republicans whitewashed a constitutional process to let a guilty president get away. I say a guilty president because if Donald Trump is innocent, why the hell would you not have Bolton come testify? So you see the dilemma. McConnell and Graham are at risk of and the greater Republican leadership in the Senate are at risk of being known historically for the rest of American history of making a mockery of what the Founding Fathers intended the impeachment and trial process to be. Now, people who are passionate Trump supporters are probably screaming at me right now, "Well, the whole impeachment process was a mockery from the beginning. Didn't you see what they did in the House?" Okay, well, without getting into whether that is a factual assessment or not, I would ask any passionate Trump supporter to put in the comments if they see any flaw in the argument that since Bolton is presumed to have first-hand knowledge of Trump's intentions, if you support Trump and you believe he's innocent, why would you not want Bolton to come testify? Okay? I don't know what John Bolton will say when he testifies, and neither do you. And what he would testify to is not really the important part as far as the decision as to whether or not to have him come testify. The important element about having him come testify is that it will validate that the impeachment process as the founders laid down in the Constitution can still be properly and constitutionally enacted in 2020. That we haven't reached the ugly, disgusting, reprehensible point in our government where a party will completely gut the intentions of the Founding Fathers to save their guy. Okay? That's not what the founders intended. So when I say Bolton needs to come testify, it's not because I know what Bolton's going to testify to. I don't, and neither do you. What I'm saying is it is damaging for the country and for the Constitution to not have Bolton come testify. Thanks for being here.